Hi everyone and welcome to WorldView. WorldView is a podcast where we explore everyone's perspectives on all things that can broaden our worldview. If you're watching our content so far and liked it, please consider liking this video, subscribing and donating on Patreon. Today we're talking with Major General Bantu Holomisa. The general was the commander of the Transkei Defence Force and head of Transkei Government from 1987 to 1994. In 1994, General Holomisa led the Transkei delegation to the Convention for Democratic South Africa negotiations. After being expelled in 1996 from the ANC for testifying at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission about the issues in the Transkei, he co-founded the United Democratic Movement, a party that he represented since 1994. The general has addressed many international forums like the United Nations Security Council and the Council on Foreign Relations. General, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You have such a storied past and you've been so fundamentally involved in a lot of the things that formed our modern South Africa. I wondered if you'd be comfortable in telling some of the stories or experiences that you had during that time, or perhaps even your experience of the Apartheid era.
Well, of course, the past of South Africa is well documented. I'm not going to waste your time on that. Even the United Nations declared that policy as inhumane. So I would like to focus more on how did we achieve our freedom. Through the pressure from the international community and also the protest by South Africans inside South Africa, as well as the little bit of military pressure from the wing of the ANC, that is MK. So we managed to force the government to a round table. But in terms of militarily speak, in terms of the conflict of South Africa, militarily speaking, the conflict between black and white, there was no winner. The winner was South Africa. So there's no one that can claim that he or she liberated South Africa by use of weapons. Nor can anyone say, yes, we allowed you to come and hit us and so on and so on. But the negotiation produced one of the best constitutions in the world. Yes, there have been challenges in implementing some of the chapters contained in the Constitution. Of course, we are trying to address a history of 300 years oppression. So we are happy with what we have, but there's a lot of work which still needs to be done.
No, definitely, yeah. And I mean, the progress has been up and down, definitely. But a lot of people feel like in one specific category, and you have some experience in this as the commander of the Transkei Defence Force, that our modern army just isn't up to it doesn't compare to the army that we had in the previous governmental era. And this is something which has actually been quite interesting to discuss, but a lot of people feel like we don't necessarily need an army, or like this isn't really important. But there is a situation where they feel like at the moment it's just lumping along. What is your experience in the comparison between our current army and the army back then? Is it a fair comparison that people are making in criticizing the army today?
Yeah, it's a fair criticism if you don't know the background. The government in 1998 took a decision to say we are no longer going to invest on military security. Rather, we must spend more time on social security. So that has therefore meant that the budget for the Defence Force is cut to bone. To such an extent that we felt at the time that there was no need to spend money on buying flashy weapons and so on. But unfortunately, as you are aware, corruption is always show its ugly head, because we ended up buying, investing a lot on arms deal. But the truth of the matter is that those toys were only for Air Force and the Navy. The army itself has never got funded at all. About infantry and so on. So they are still using the old equipment. Besides, there is no threat currently as per the threat analysis for South Africa to say we are facing a conventional warfare threat. But the role of the SANDF has been more on peacekeeping and joining the other countries under the command of the United Nations. So yes, you can therefore compare that other army. And another thing is that the background of the current commanders have not grown up in the conventional warfare background. They were mainly guerrillas and so on. So therefore, you can expect that the perception of the public is that this is not the right thing or right army we have. So I suspect, therefore, because the army is aging big time, we are going to have a young, up and coming defense force, but small but effective.
Yeah, and there's a lot of scenarios in other countries where a smaller but better trained and more innovative force is actually way more effective than having a nice grand army that the government spends a lot of money on. So this is exactly a good point to make in terms of the future for the army. Specifically, going back a bit into your history, you did you made you testified at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 1996, and the result of there was a quite big political rift between you and the party that you initially were part of. What did you testify, and why did you decide to make this testimony?
We were encouraged by the leadership of the ANC. Remember that time I was a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, having received the most votes in the Congress, which we had in Bloemfontein in 1994. And then I went to testify to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I asked the commission to compensate the families of the deceased soldiers of the then Transkei Defence Force who were killed in an abortive coup supported by de Klerk's government in Pretoria after we removed the Matanzima and the Stella Stau government. My sin was to make a reference to the fact that Sol Kesner paid 2 million rands to the cabinet of the then Transkei government, where each minister got 50,000 rand each. And then I said to the commission, because it was a political intervention by us, so the families of those deceased soldiers in the abortive coup deserve to be compensated. So then the ANC said I was accusing one of the cabinet ministers, Stella Stau, whom we had removed then. But I said, guys, are you sober? Are you well upstairs? This is a historical reference point. I was making a reference. So they overreacted, and then they said I must go and face the DC. But I said to them, you seem to be having a conflict of interest here. Because when I mentioned the name of Sol Kesner, you guys, you panicked beyond comprehension, because he also funded you. Therefore, you can't be good adjudicators. So I said, no, I'm not going to attend the kangaroo court. So he said I must go to their disciplinary committee. That was it. Because I couldn't bend my principle, because President Mandela even suggested that I should apologize. But I said, apologize for what? Because I was sober when I took a decision with other soldiers to remove the corrupt government. There will be no apology. That's what I said to him.
Mm. Well, you stick by your principles, and that led to you co-founding the United Democratic Movement, which is a party in South Africa that also has a very niche, good, strong support. Could you perhaps please describe the mission of the UDM, and like what is this group that it specifically represents, and how could it possibly increase its support?
Well, the mission and of the United Democratic Movement is simple. We were born after we had adopted New South Africa. And our main aim is to tap into the rich diversity of South Africa and promote unity with a view to improve the quality of life of all South Africans. That's it in short. But we do have policies, and our argument in that policy document is that we said the government must do more, especially in addressing the backlogs and imbalances of the past. Right now, as we are talking about climate change, you will find that as we are we are in a transition to renewable energy. But if you go to places like the townships and the homelands, former homelands, you will find that that infrastructure still needs to be upgraded to be more or less the same as the rest of the infrastructure which was developed by white South Africans. Mm. So those are the kinds of backlogs we need to look into, the technology of those areas. So we don't mince our words when it comes to, for the state, not to relegate that responsibility to anybody, but it is the responsibility of the government to make sure that they do intervene in infrastructure development and see to it that the people participate in the economy of the country by such things as bringing a rollout broadband, a Wi-Fi, so that people can have access to internet. There must be internet, free internet to schools, so that they can access any information they need.
No, definitely. I mean, it's big. It's such a fundamental part of the democratic part of our country to actually provide a forum and a means for these people to take part of these discussions, no matter where they are, which is why connectivity is such an important issue that you've now mentioned. I quickly want to move towards one of the coalitions that the United Democratic Movement had in the past couple of years in 2016. What's your opinion on what happened to Nelson Mandela Bay UDM councillor Mongameli Bobani? Do you feel like he was betrayed by the BA? You know, what's the story behind that chain of events?
The relationship between the DA and the UDM had never been bad. But we had a problem of personality clashes between Mr. Trollip and Mr. Bobani. And the coalition partners even investigated this conflict, but they all came to the conclusion that these are personality clashes. One is accusing another one, and so on and so on. But that is history now, because we have again resumed that coalition between the DA and the UDM, and it's going on very well.
It's actually an interesting point to lift, because in that case, would it be fair to say that perhaps the conflict between them was personal and not political, and therefore there was a conflict for the wrong reason? Is that a fair assessment?
Well, that's why people get dubbed it as it was a clash of personalities. When you have two strong people sometimes under one roof, it doesn't always produce good results. But we have learned our lessons.
There's an increasing, or at least there was a really increasing general positivity among South Africans when President Cyril Ramaphosa took over from former President Jacob Zuma. There's been a lot of comparisons made between them, especially in the way that President Ramaphosa has dealt with issues that President Zuma caused over the past couple of years. What, in your opinion, is the difference in character between our two presidents, Ramaphosa and former President Jacob Zuma? And what do you think is the chances of President Zuma actually landing in jail?
Well, unfortunately, President Ramaphosa came into power at a right time for the country, but at the wrong time at the same time, because it was hardly a year when the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic kicked in. And that has, I'm sure, has derailed his program of reconciling and also with his comrades. And on the other hand, there are pressures from the people who want service delivery. But on the other hand, the money is had to be diverted to attend to the COVID-19 pandemic. So as far as the ANC is concerned, Cyril Ramaphosa was not elected unanimously as the president, as you know. There were other players who were contesting that position. And these other people are accused of still having links with the former president, who is aggrieved that the government is persecuting him. But unfortunately, it was not a Cyril's program. Cyril inherited that arms deal fiasco by Zuma and others. So as far as is concerned, I think he will continue to seek reconciliation within those factions. But the time is running against him because people want to see service delivered on the ground. And as you know, he is now trying to show some teeth by saying those who have been fingered in the corrupt-related cases must go and face the music. That's a new culture which he's introducing, and there seems to be a lot of resistance from within.
That's an extremely big challenge for him. And a lot of South Africans feel like definitely he inherited this problem. He didn't cause this problem. President Ramaphosa inherited this problem. But it is diverting away from the reconciliation journey and also the service delivery journey in the amount of money that's being spent on this legal, elongated legal trial with the previous pockets of former President Jacob Zuma's, cohorts and people that worked with him. In this way, do you feel like the situation in which the amount of time and money and efforts being spent by the government to prosecute a previous group should perhaps in some way be redirected towards rather spending more time on reconciliation and service delivery and leave the situation on the normal track instead of it being a political force as it currently is?
Well, unfortunately, we cannot avoid that unless we want to say people must not be prosecuted. So we would be encouraging people to continue looting with impunity. So I think these cases must continue so that we make sure that this thing doesn't happen again. The only thing which needs to be done for the National Prosecuting Authority as well as the courts, perhaps to embark on a campaign or on a program of special courts so that these cases can be be fixed quickly, and then we get on with our lives.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That would definitely benefit both, stopping this type of thing from happening again and, accelerating service delivery, which is the thing that most people have been denied for the past couple of years under President Zuma. In terms of the internal battle in the ANC, who do you think will win? I mean, between the so-called corrupt faction from Ace Magashule and the so-called moderate faction from President Ramaphosa for the heart of the ANC? Because like you said, he wasn't voted in unanimously. There's a lot of players there. The battle's still ongoing, even though as President Ramaphosa is elected president.
My short answer to that would be, if the ANC is still interested in running South Africa in future, they should deal with corruption amongst its ranks right now. So I predict that those who have that vision will triumph at the end of the day.
Yeah, they will work together and they'll probably triumph through, working through this problem as it's a fundamental issue of South Africa. A lot of South Africans feel like this is the one thing that's kind of holding us back. But there is kind of at the same time, a media drive and a public opinion that the main thing that's holding us back is this corruption and the lack of service delivery. Do you feel like this is fair, or is there other fundamental problems that South Africa should face? Something that people might be missing that South Africans should face first in terms of getting us back on track?
The media and the people of South Africa are on the right course. We have to deal with this corruption, because no investor in this day and in this day and age who would come to South Africa and invest, and if he knows that before he gets permits or whatever, he has or he or she has to put up a topping up amount of money reserved to pay official corrupt-related case. No, we need to deal with this matter now. No postponement is needed.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for your input on that. I want to talk about, lastly, I want to talk about another topic which I know you're incredibly passionate about, which is that you are the president of the Champions for the Environmental Foundation. What does this seek to address, and what are the issues that you so strongly support that you currently head this council, or foundation rather?
The Champions of the Environment Foundation is merely a foundation which is looking at creating awareness about the environment, especially in disadvantaged community areas where the environment was regarded as a thing of the rich white South Africans. But the reality now, we are running these institutions, national parks. Then you have people, homes adjacent to the national parks, and those people need to be educated. Also, we need to inculcate a culture of ownership where we say, guys, stop littering, stop dumping waste anywhere. We have also run workshops for the CEOs of various institutions, especially financial institutions, where we were talking about the taxes, the carbon taxes, which were to be introduced in South Africa then. Now those carbon taxes are now law in this country. All new vehicles, people have to pay for the carbon for polluting our space. I've been fortunate also to have been invited to the Presidential Council on Climate Change. And I'm going to contribute there because already I've been participating in programs related to that. I remember during 2017, COP17, we planted about 35,000 indigenous trees in one day. We're creating a forest in one day with the late king of the Zulus, King Zwelithini, where we appealed to the girls who were doing a reed dance, and they planted those trees. That area now looks nice. So I would continue to create awareness and educate our people. The current environmental policy, I organized it. That process, we started it in 1995 when I was the Deputy Minister of Environment. So I'm happy that that process culminated into the current legislation. And so I'm close to the environment, as you said, and I don't want to abdicate that route.
It's an incredibly inspiring situation to hear, especially from people in our politics, to really think about the environment as not something that's only cared about by people that are more well off that can care about the environment, but rather as our community as a whole, and our responsibility as people that have more to educate and fund this type of sustainability. In that line, I want to talk about just lastly some renewable energies that are becoming more and more and more affordable for people to put in. But there is a situation in our politics where incentives for these renewable energies simply aren't being prioritized in the way that it's actually not economically viable for someone to install, for example, solar power or some type of renewable energy at their home and then actually make, money back off of it so that it's a positive cycle, so that more people are incentivized to do it, which leads to mostly businesses that can afford the capital cost of installing this type of systems and rich communities that install these type of systems. But the rest of Africa is kind of falling behind. They're not incentivized correctly. Do you feel as part of that foundation that perhaps the government should put in some sort of incentives for installing renewable energies at home, and perhaps even our national grid be modified to, be compatible for this type of energy generation?
Well, it's a very tricky situation because we still have labor which we need to take care of. It's not going to be an easy transition, given that the technology of South Africa is still lagging far behind to the rest of the world because of the sanctions we once had in this country. But since 1994, we are now back into the global village. And we have no choice but to play according to the conventions which we have signed. But there are certain conditions. Other countries like Europe, USA, and many others are using, for instance, nuclear. In South Africa, we have been using coal. And that coal in this country is a major resource to create jobs. It also generates electricity. Now there is this period, we are in a period of saying now, right, we adopt the international standards. We have committed ourselves to reach certain percentage by certain year to reduce the emissions. But the nationally determined contribution will differ from one country to the other, depending on the technology and depending on the circumstances. Right now, as I say, we are talking about transition towards the renewable energy world. But there are still fears about what kind of world is this? Will it be sustainable? How are other countries who are already there are doing? My example is it has always been what is this where Barcelona comes from? Spain. Spain has long been using renewable energies, and I'm sure even the budgeting system of theirs has been designed towards that. So in South Africa, therefore, it's gonna be a tall order in terms of rearranging the budgetary systems so that we subsidize the people in order to get renewable energy equipment. Because as you said, it's too expensive to that one would do that. So in the Presidential Commission on climate change, we are discussing exactly that as to what should we advise to the government in line with the demands of the international conventions. It's not easy.
No, well, thank you so much for your input on that. I know it's something that you're passionate about, so I'm very happy to hear you talk about it. I just want to thank you as well for joining us today on WorldView. It's been some insightful discussions that we've possibly had. I want to leave you with the last chance to add or say or plug anything that you would like to.
No, nothing except thank you for the opportunity.
No, we thank you so much. So for those of you that made this far in the podcast, you most definitely liked it. If you believe in what General Bantu Holomisa says, please by all means like and share this message so it can reach more people. And of course, us as a YouTube channel, it also helps us out to grow. So thank you so much for watching. This has been WorldView.